Hello and welcome again to Conscious TV. I'm Iain McNay and today we have another programme in our series on the Enneagram, and this time we're talking about Type 1, how it is to be a Type 1 and the potential of being a Type 1. And I have with me in the studio today indeed 3 Type 1s. So we've got Carlos, who actually has flown today all the way from Spain to be here, so I really appreciate that, Carlos.
Pleasure, Iain.
And there's Anne, and there's James. And I have to say, just to give it a starting point, this has been the hardest programme to put together of all the Enneagram types. Twice we've thought we've had it all together, and then people have pulled out. Someone else pulled out on Sunday night, and Carlos jumped to the rescue flying on a plane, which is fantastic. So I'm really happy we're all here, and I'm sure that shows something about the Type 1, but I guess that'll come out in due course. So let's start with you, Carlos.
Yeah. How
you find it is to be a number 1, and tell us a bit about the Enneagram and how it's affected your life.
Okay, well, the Enneagram is, the theory behind the Enneagram is that at a very young age, I think the age is between 3 and 5 years, we have a contraction of energy and we disconnect ourselves from the oneness of the universe. And there are 9 different ways that this disconnection takes place, and we spend the rest of our lives expressing this loss through a different personality type. And the particular number that we're talking about here today, which is 1, it forms part of the instinctive triad. And we are on the edge. So we have the 8s and the 9s are the 1s, which are the instinctives. And the 1's been given the title of reformer. And the reformer, I think, is a very apt name for it, because we're constantly seeking or looking to better what we have around us. Things are not right, they're not perfect, and we want to make them perfect. And we want things to look good, and we want to be good, and we want everybody around us to be good and to be at the same level that we are or that we consider to be good. And things can start going wrong depending on how unhealthy or healthy you are, you know, if things don't go your way. Going back to what you said before about the Enneagram, how I discovered it, it was through Conscious TV. I think about 3 years ago, you interviewed Sandra.
Sandra Matry.
Yes, and I was very, very interested. I bought the book. And I read a few books about it, and I love to talk about it and to express my feelings and share what I know with other people, which is another typical trait of the 1s. We like to share what we learn and what you know, what comes our way. We like to people to enjoy it the same way that we do.
How did you feel when you found out you were a Type 1?
That's a good question. I think with me, I felt. In a way, I felt relieved, and I felt freed as well, because sometimes I think 1s can suffer from, we can become a little bit intense, and we are aware of this intensity. And just knowing how the inner forces within us work was just, it was a wake up. It was an epiphany moment, really. It was wonderful. It was a complete relaxation, understanding, and I finally understand why I behave this way. And
that's a real relief, isn't it?
It was. It was a hell of a relief. Yeah. It was a relief, and I'm constantly catching myself, because being self-aware now that I am, I'm not working on autopilot. I'm now on, you know, conscious of my words and my actions. I often, when the inertia of my personality takes over again, I catch myself and and I pull myself back in again when I feel that I may be going down the wrong road.
So it's given you insights into more how your personality is functioning and manifesting in the world.
Definitely, definitely. And it's also had an effect on the people around me. Which, I mean, everybody that knows me said that I've gone through a tremendous transformation, and that the Enneagram is definitely partly responsible for that. Not exclusively, but certainly on the day-to-day basis, it's responsible for that.
James, you were wanting to come in there, I think.
Well, it was really funny when I hadn't thought about the reform a bit before, but the thing that really made me laugh was when you're talking about getting things better and right, and it made me think about loading the dishwasher. It's just a really mundane thing, but I've noticed since I've been aware of being a one and being a bit more self-aware that doing that and how it really annoys my wife, but I'm really annoyed at her having not loaded it properly, because everything can clearly tessellate a lot better and I can load it perfectly. So I will often come along and reload it, and she just watched me in despair, whereas I'm despairing that, you know, it wasn't loaded properly in the first place, because we can get a load more cups in and the forks can all be in the right place. And it's like, well, why can't you just do it properly in the first place? So there's kind of anger and resentment about someone not being able to do it properly. But it's been incredibly liberating, and that's why I'm smiling about realising that. So you use the word relaxed. It was that relaxedness. I can now be aware I'm doing it and kind of almost relax into it, and still perhaps do it because I quite enjoy doing it in a way. You know, there's a kind of a comfort in that vague obsessional nature, I guess. But being aware of it just has changed the energy around it on good days. On bad days, it's, you know, it's still there, and all kinds of things come up as a result. So it really made me laugh, that
So
relaxing into it.
On a practical level, are you saying you're more understanding of your wife not doing the loading perfectly in your eyes?
Yeah, on good days, absolutely.
On good days.
Yeah, but you know, being straight, on the days where I'm not feeling very generous, or I've been really criticising myself, because I think a lot of it comes from my inner criticism about I'm not good enough, or I need to do this right for some reason, that there is a right way, and so I've got to do it. I've got a standard I have to set, which is my standard, which is the highest standard, but the right standard. So I have to live to that. So if I don't see someone else living to it, then I'm kind of, you should be living to that. But it's a real trap of being in my own standard, which I'm never going to live up to. So it's been really nice to realise that I'm just trapping myself in this prison if I'm not careful.
And it's very draining, isn't it? Because all that energy in being so cross with other people in the household, you know, because they haven't loaded it, you could be putting into something else.
Well, it's the tension, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Physically in your body. Really, really draining. It's exhausting, and then you realise, what have I done? Got so exhausted over something really stupid.
So could we say, generally speaking, for a type 1, this issue of perfection is a very paramount issue? Or is it just manifesting in different areas? Do you feel the same, you want the same precision and perfection in other areas of your lives?
I wish I could say that, actually. I mean, I think for me, yes, there's a lot of perfectionism about things, but sometimes I feel the really important things, much deeper things, I'm quite happy just to float away. You know, and I think, for example, I can be quite hypocritical in that I'm setting all these standards, but actually, you know, deep down, you know, I won't set those, I won't actually carry out those standards myself. And I think that, so I think I drop the standards for myself. So it's not in every aspect of life. I think it's just perhaps easier things to identify.
I think with the James was saying about the perfection, the dishwasher story, I agree with you 100%. I'm there. I know it's exactly where you're coming from. The perfection thing with me, I find that I don't seek perfection. What happens to me is that imperfection seeks me. I'll give you an example. I'm looking at those flowers there, and I know they're very nice, but for some reason, I am drawn to the leaf on the side there that's not quite right, and the one that's it's crooked, and that's what I'm noticing. I'm aware that everything is beautiful, but for some reason it's pulling me there, and I have issues.
So which leaf is it? How's the one with it?
That one there.
This one here.
And I got to a stage, I think, where more or less from the moment I woke up in the morning and got out of bed until the moment I got back into bed, it was like going to court, being in court. I was the prosecutor, I was the judge, the defendant, the executioner, the whole thing, and it was a constant judgment going on in my mind. And driving down the road, and the weeds on the side of the road were annoying me. I'm thinking, what, you know, somebody should be here, and that should be cleaned up, or some litter, or or again, whatever. It didn't matter what it was about. It was just imperfection seeks me out. And I think when with the Enneagram, when I realised that, I thought, yes, you don't have to be perfect all the time. We don't have to. I needed to free myself. It was liberating, as I said before, from the constraints of having to expect everything to be that way. It's exhausting. You're absolutely right. I completely agree with you.
Because I think losing energy is so important, isn't it? And I think that's been a real benefit for me with the Enneagram, that I can just see. I mean, energy. You need. Life's difficult as it is, and just to be wasting energy in getting so angry about things is it's just pointless. And plus, it upsets other people, I think so.
One thing that's been said about the ones is that they are the policemen and policewomen of the Enneagram, and they're kind of a bit like a policeman, kind of area. What are you doing here? And kind of. Is that something that you would agree with or connect with?
Yeah, I can relate to the sense of checking upness and the idea of noticing things and needing to point it out that it could be done in a different way, a better way. Yeah, and checking out on anything, on anybody really, if I'm not careful, and tending to notice what's not happening right and what's not being adhered to, rather than the fact that it's roughly right at all. So I'll notice, I don't know, we had our house decorated a while ago, and that we had one of these glass pane doors with 20 odd panes, and all the paintwork had to be done between each of the glass panes. And my wife was just pleased that it had all been done. Someone had come and done it. We had 3 young kids, blah, blah, blah. But the first thing I do, I walk in the hall and I noticed that they'd missed one of the strips, just a tiny bit, about that long. But I just noticed it, and I could not help myself but to say that, knowing full well that would cause an argument, and that I was like not being grateful or not noticing. But yeah, so I almost had my clipboard, and it was like, that's not right. That's quality control. I can't be happy with what these people have done. We need to get them back. And that's really, to your point about energy, so sapping. I feel tense talking about it with you now. So I don't want to be there. I'm really glad that I don't have to be there as much as I was trapped in it before. So absolutely, checklists, if that's what you meant.
Well, I know they are sometimes called the policeman of the Enneagram. So is that something that you feeling yourself? You have that?
I think probably now I may have been. I used to I used to watch people and how they used to behave and see they'd meet my standards, which are pretty high. And I must say, I think the ones also, we were talking about other people's standards, but I think the ones have an incredible ability to be ruthless with themselves as well, not just with other people. I mean, I know what you said before about that there could be an element of hypocrisy, but generally, the court case isn't just about everything else around us. It's about ourselves and where our mind is. Certainly, it is with me, and I've taken myself to terrible places in my mind and in the past when I wasn't aware. And as you say, it's such a waste of energy, because you don't have to be angry, and the clothes don't have to be folded perfectly over the chair, and it doesn't matter if the boots are, aren't in a neat little corner. We can be very, very anal, I think, the ones, and life's not. It's not about that, is it? At the end of the day.
Yes. I mean, I suppose the other thing too is that you can get so carried away, it then trips you, isn't it? So you ignore the obvious, and I find that at work. Where I'm with, because I'm a nurse, and where I'm with patients, and if they come in, see me, and they're completely disorganized, and I'm thinking, I can't see a way through all this. It should be like this. This person should be presenting with a problem which is, A, B, C, and D, and I get so worked up in trying to understand what the problem is that I'll then go and look, completely overlook the obvious. And I think in doing that, then I I think I do, you know, exude that tenseness and anger with the patient, and probably the outcome isn't terribly satisfactory because, you know, they've not really got what they need. But I think that perfectionism can just blind one, you know, to what actually is going on.
I've got some notes here of other indicators. I wonder very much, people who are watching this who aren't sure which type they are, but think they might be a type 1. I've got some other notes that I've got. So just tell me, guys, about how you feel about this in terms of your own experiences. It's difficult to be spontaneous. Would you say that that's true sometimes? Or?
I think I probably need to prepare myself. I need to work myself up.
Right.
I'm not an off-the-cuff person. I like it when the rare occasions that I am, but not generally. I'm not really like that, so I can probably relate to that.
But you were spontaneous flying over for this interview, weren't you?
Well,
Yes.
So you do yourself some credit, but yeah.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Do you feel that you lack spontaneity sometimes?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the need to plan and have an element of control over what's going to happen. So the idea of what a weekend could look like, say, almost planning it by the hour and trapping myself in that plan so that I have to follow the plan, even if it clearly doesn't feel right, and it doesn't, you know, very often if that's happening like that. Really is quite miserable actually in that way. So I'd say, yeah, it's a freedom when you then can have that spontaneity, but it seems to trap me if I'm not careful about, no, I said I was going to do this, and kind of doggedly carry on. And
then often feel guilty about not getting enough accomplished. Does that apply to you, Anne, at all? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, when I'm, you know, going over things, to me, a good day is, well, you know, this was achieved and that was achieved, and so if I haven't managed to do those things, but I think it's this feeling of accomplishment which is very important.
Okay.
List making.
You're into making lists?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Really trying to free myself from lists, because the day would always be judged by if I've done my list, irrespective of how hard it was, and of course it was always too hard. And then I'd put that on other people. And however well we'd done loads of really good stuff, and perhaps different things had happened either in my paid work or at home, if we hadn't done the list, there was still a kind of sense of, it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
Something else is on this list, talking a list, there's a list here, on this list is something we talked about earlier before we started recording, which is incorrect grammar and spelling bothers me a lot. And you mentioned this actually, something that bothers you sometimes.
I think it's something that I pick up on, absolutely, and especially in what I perceive as important occasions. If you're doing a big presentation or something, and I notice people have, you know, apostrophes or hyphens or units of measure. I've got a scientific background, and if the units of measure aren't in the right SI way, then I've found I'm more relaxed about it, but I still, in a more relaxed way, still want to correct it. So yeah, I can relate to that. Pedantry.
And you're idealistic and want to make the world a better place. Is that right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But that's a the never-ending story, really. That can become quite frustrating. That one. You know, in my case, I've done a lot of research. I've read an awful lot of books about things, and I'd like to go back to what we were talking about before. But you mentioned anger, and ones have an issue with anger, I think. And I think I think the only way you can make the benefits of the Enneagram is when you accept these terrible negative traits that we have, and accept and I think for many years I was trying to lock up anger in a safety deposit and throw away the key. But it's kind of like holding a ball underwater. Yeah, the ball would want to rise to the surface, and if you take your hands off it, it'll come up somewhere else, or it'll come up. And I think people perceive this tension that we have. We're constantly keeping this ball underwater, and so with things like trying to make the world a better place, this creates a lot of frustration. And I think one's Certainly in my past, I've been very frustrated about many things. And that's one of them. I think ones that do a lot of civic, I think they go into politics and we want to make things better, so we've got to do our bit.
Yes.
So ones will probably tend to...
Dutifulness.
Yeah.
Real sense of duty, I find, with that. Just, it can be quite trapping again in terms of the standards you set about how much of that you should be doing and what a fair contribution is, and what you choose to do as your work. Because I could relate to that. The paid work I've chosen is about, in theory, a lack of acceptance of what's in front of us in terms of I work on environmental issues and on ethical issues in manufacturing industries. And if I'm not careful, I hold that with a great deal of anger and resentment about, well, it just shouldn't be like this. And rather like when you were telling the story about treating a patient, if that anxiety and that anger is coming through, I'm almost acting out the absolute opposite of what I'm trying to work towards.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So you're acting out the opposite to what you're trying to work towards.
Yeah, if I'm being, unfair on others or, being tyrannical.
When you see that, what kind of effect does that have on you?
Well, now it's really lovely to realise that. And I feel, as I'm saying that to you, I feel really quite warm and happy in that because I can do something about that. And I can talk about it, which in itself seems really helpful to other people. So by saying, okay, what we're doing right now, how we are doing it, to your point, isn't that interesting what we're doing? And just naming it seems to take such a lot of I can feel it as I talk to you now, the kind of tension out of my jaw or my face, and the anger goes, because for a start I've showed it to you, I've kind of given you this humility and this vulnerability, which is the complete other opposite of the kind of fear that I'm not good enough. So just by putting it out there for you, it's like, okay, come on then, if you're going to kick me, kind of thing. But somehow trusting, having got through that place, that I can put it out there. So yeah, that word liberation comes back time and again when you realise these things are going on. Really helpful.
Because another one that I was going to read out was, kind of ties in with this roughly, that you have a tendency to hang on to resentment for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you're naming it and coming out with it, that's beginning to break that trait, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And I was saying to you earlier, and I'm like one of these bag ladies. I mean, I just pull along, loads of resentment. All my life, I think I've resented, and I noticed just recently that is getting better, actually, because there was something that occurred recently, and I felt I was getting very angry and resentful, but I was able just to drop it, actually, and it just felt so much better. There was nothing that could be done, so there's no point in just getting so worked up about it. I still have to relate to this person, so the best thing now is just to leave it and start up anew. But I think that's a fairly recent step I've made, I think, in dealing with resentment. But I almost feel as if I've carried so many resentments in my life that every day I'm going to have to sort of just make a real effort just to sort of put these all to the back now.
So you've all in your own way kind of said that when you've understood something in yourself and acknowledged it, somewhere that's been the start of a change in terms of that hasn't been so strong from there onward. There onwards. So I think that's something very positive we can take from this, and that with the type ones, that once you do understand it, you have the intelligence and the, what's the word I'm looking for? You have the integrity to then start to try and change things for the better in yourself. Would you agree with that?
That word integrity is something that all ones look for.
Yes.
Would you agree? Yes.
Strongly.
And I think ones are so passionate about the things they believe in. They're very strong convictions, And when we transmit our ideas and our beliefs to other people, we become resentful when we kind of like know what's best for other people.
It's that righteousness, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. And we become resentful when we're not being listened to. And because I think deep down there are good intentions. I mean certainly there's not.
Absolutely.
I don't think, obviously, depending on how healthy you are, but so there is resentment in that. I feel that in myself sometimes, yeah.
But that point about the good intention, and when you were talking about the day-by-day accepting, those things really seem to come together for me, because isn't the kind of idea behind the oneness is being able to see the world as it is, as actually being quite perfect as it is. And so that act of accepting it's a relief, because actually we are being able to see the world as it is. And that's one of the transformational things. It feels to me like I'm going to be able to work with, being able to name this a bit more. And I can, in the examples I've been giving you, I can sense that that's happening. And one of the things that ones have is this ability to see the world as it is. So if we can get through that distortion of being really angry about how it is and seeking the reform or the justice or whatever, but actually saying, okay, it is how it is. Now what can we use our energy and tenacity and integrity to do something with it? It feels incredibly energizing, as opposed to that complete exhaustion and debilitation that comes with it. That's the sense I got from what both of you just said then, in putting those things together.
Something else was down on this list I've got here. Don't worry, it's not quite never ending, we're almost there. Is that you tend to worry a lot.
Yes, we worry about things that haven't happened, may never happen, and planning scenario. Well, it's certainly my case. Plan scenarios for things that as I say, may never happen, and again, that's also very exhausting. I remember a particular day I said to myself, I'm absolutely sick of myself, of listening to myself. I remember saying that to myself, and funny enough, when I said it, it was over. But I had to say that to myself. And the other day I was doing something in the kitchen and I was lost in my mind, and my wife said to me, "You're not having a very good day today, are you?" And I looked at her and the words, just the question, was enough to pull me out of it. Yeah.
Could it be that, we do have an ability to be disinterested. We can sort of stand back and look at things objectively. And I just wondered if you were able just to step out of yourself at that time and just realise that this really isn't necessary. This is I'm me. I'm not all these worries.
I think
But what does that mean to you? I'm me, but I'm not all these worries.
Well, I think sometimes one can get so overwhelmed with these worries that you forget about yourself.
But I'm getting at is you see yourself as separate from your worries. Is that correct?
I think that yes, I think ones do have that ability to be fair and to look at things in proportion, and so when they're with other people with sort of competing demands, they can keep that all quite balanced, and that would be the same with ourselves. That we can stand back and realise that that there's all this concern. That, I've got all this feeling that I've got all these troubles on my shoulders. Which I'm sorry, that probably sounds a bit confusing, but
no, I'm interested. When you stand back, what do you see about yourself?
Well, I think standing back is just to be able to say, I'm me, and I don't need to be right. I don't need to be perfect. Unfortunately, a number one, actually, we can slip into a feeling that we have to be right to be me. But the idea is to accept that I don't need to be right all the time.
So you see, you don't have to be driven by this conditioning, in effect.
Yes, and patterns. I think that was the benefit for me when I learnt about the Enneagram, to actually, to see that, going back to what you were saying, with the Enneagram, your personality is developing at a very young age. You can just then be driven by these motives or reasons for behaving in a particular way, and that can just take over the way you grow up, and you do relate to other people or whatever. So for example, I can remember as a very young child, people teasing me and saying, your nose is painted white because you think you're always right. And I was at a very young age, and I've just kept that going in my mind. Yeah, and they were just, I think they were just, friends. But it's quite an early memory. I'm sure I was only about 5 or 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a few books I'll show at the end, but one of them here, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. This has a list of some examples of people in various types. I wrote down actually some of the type 1s. So I'm going to read these people out because I think it's partly because it's interesting for people watching who know of these people. And then let's see what you guys feel in terms of a connection with them or how you see these people. There's Gandhi. Now Gandhi was a very good person, but it seems that he was quite a perfectionist. He knew what he wanted and he went for it. What's your feeling about when I say Gandhi was a type 1?
Righteousness. Yeah.
Righteousness.
Yeah.
I think ones want to do the right thing. They and we can be quite courageous and put a lot of things on the line. And Gandhi's a perfect example of that. The truth for a 9 is, beg your pardon, for a 1, I'm making a mistake now. For a 1 is so paramount. It's so important for 1. The truth will be heard. I don't know if that's the case with you, but if we were to list our fundamental values, the truth is one of them, possibly above loyalty and other things. The truth is certainly in my life very, very important. And so there's a perfect example, Gandhi and the truth.
And I think, he was, he was altruistic, wasn't he? And he was very focused. I think he knew from a very early age, didn't he, what he was. He started campaigning in South Africa, didn't he? I think was he a lawyer? And then he moved to India, and he kept that focus through, a lot of very bitter political situations. So,
is this something you see as one of your qualities, in terms of you're able to take something that's important to you and keep the focus and keep going with it?
Yes.
Yeah, doggedness.
Well, no, I don't think it is necessarily always doggedness. We'll come on to this more, but it's also the potential of the type 1. Sure. We're not talking about personality traits. We're talking about more about who you really are from your essence and how the potential of that in the world. And so these people, we're not necessarily looking at their neurosis. We're looking at it might include part of their neurosis. We're looking at their qualities as well. And I'll go down the list, and it's fun, and it may trigger some more things for you guys. George Harrison was apparently a number 1.
I can't say much about apart from his music.
Okay. There's Al Gore, who again is obviously he's been very determined to, especially on the environmental front, to keep running with what he believes. It takes a lot of courage, especially in America, to do that.
Gosh, I don't know enough about him really to say it.
But there's something about the time he's been doing that as well, isn't there? He's been doing it for a long time, and he started that a long time.
He did indeed,
29 years ago.
Yeah.
So carrying on that, yeah.
Well, someone that's more in the front of things now is Hillary Clinton, is apparently a type 1. These are all, there's no English people here, unfortunately, or American or other countries, but she obviously is in the news a lot.
I suppose she's quite blunt, isn't she? I mean, she comes out with statements. She points out faults and, take it or leave it.
Is that how you see yourself? Quite blunt at times?
Well, I think ones can be, yes. I mean, they can be quite offensive, in the way they say things. I mean, she's a politician. I'm sure she knows how to do that. But they are. I just wondered if that's a quality in her.
I think Hillary Clinton's probably got a thicker skin. I would say she was probably innate. I think ones we have our consciousness, our conscious comes back to haunt us later, after the misdeeds that we've done and said and offended people. We're back in court again, and I don't think she would be able to survive myself. I don't understand why she's on that list actually. How she'd be able to survive with, particularly in politics,
Anyway, we're not here to debate the list.
No, we're not.
I want to give you one more. A good British woman who's again been in the news recently, Vanessa Redgrave, is apparently a type 1. I don't know whether she portrays anything that triggers
There's
something.
a tension about her, isn't there, Vanessa Redgrave? You can feel it. You can, when she's acting, and when she's giving interviews. I could probably relate to that one. I can see that. Because when we met, you met me just before the show started. I immediately recognised in you, just by the way you were talking and the way that you were a 1 as well.
Right. Yes.
With James, up until you opened your mouth and started talking, I didn't quite pick it up, but certainly with Anne I did. So that's why I can probably say that about him.
Okay. So one of the things that we've hinted on and we've started talking about is the potential, i.e. not the neurosis, let's say, not the conditioning, but where you guys feel you're moving as a type 1 and where you feel you're moving to, because that's no point in having all this information and then not integrating it as you obviously have, and then seeing where you can go with it. So I'm wondering how you've been finding that. You mentioned specific examples of things, but let's have a little chat about generally how you see that for the type 1, the potential, with examples from yourselves.
Well, I feel that this coming to terms with how, picking up on what you said, that accepting the world isn't perfect. We can see flaws, but accepting how the world is and just being more aware of things that one can do and things that one can't do, and one just has to leave. But feeling, I'm just thinking of that that quote by, is it Niebuhr? God grant me the courage to do the things that I can change, and the wisdom, to leave the things I can't, and to have the wisdom to distinguish between the two. And I feel that that's very helpful for number 1, to learn to just, to grow in wisdom and to see that actually there are a lot of things one just has to leave for other people.
Yeah, that hit home. And be really compassionate with myself about when that happened. Accepting that act of accepting that I can't and don't need, and I'm probably not best placed to do all of those different things.
Yes.
And that point about wisdom, about being able to discern it, I had this real sense as you were speaking that relaxing into it, relaxing into all these challenges and perhaps just letting them be there for a while, the answer comes a bit more in terms of choosing the right place.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm holding the number of the challenges all together, this long list, it's very hard to do any of them very well. Whereas actually when I just say, okay, let's find out which one's the right, or one that I can do, that felt like a bit of a trap, the right one. But tend to just be able to do that in a way which is more helpful, and actually, again, the way of doing it seems to transmit more positively. Really interesting as I'm describing that, I feel a lot of the traps of oneness about using the words like better and rightness, and that stuff's behind it. Still, there's a hell of a lot to work with in that area, but just the naming and the accepting is really, really helpful.
You see, there's also another way to look at it. It's also possibly falling back more into who you really are, i.e. you leave the conditioning aside, and then what's left then, or what starts to be revealed then. I don't know if that connects with any of you.
Well, the word wisdom's been used twice by both of you, and you used the word before, integrity, and wisdom is one of the qualities I think that ones aspire to, and I think it's on our list of things to achieve in our life is to be wise people, and to help other people, and I think ones can also be quite playful once we learn to, when we come to terms with who we are. And I don't know about you, but I certainly like to have some fun and enjoy other people's company, enjoy sharing my things. But I've learnt not to get frustrated when things aren't seen the way that I expect them to see, and that other people do have an opinion and a right to their own experiences. And for many years, that wasn't the case with me. I just couldn't understand why people behaved the way they did.
Yeah.
And until the Enneagram gave me that is a tool, know that there are 9 other different ways of seeing life through these eyes, not just this vision.
And actually the richness I found that comes with that, of accepting that the way someone else is doing something or the way they're behaving, if I can watch it and actually see it through objectively about it's happening in front of me, and actually see it rather than judge it as not how I'd be doing it, I found I've learned and I've benefited from just watching that happen and seeing that there is a different way of doing stuff, and that I'm not infallible, and indeed I don't need to be infallible, because it's not about fallibility or infallibility. It's just about how things are, and about how other people can do things in different ways, and things can happen in a different way to the way in which I'd perhaps imagined it needed to happen, and of course it didn't. So you used the word liberation very early on, and that just feels really strong in that way.
You just used the word judgment, and I feel that when one's free themselves of judgment, and everybody else, that's when the flower can begin to flourish, and we can grow. Answering your question, that's when. But I think we have to come to terms with that first. I think we have to do that, and we have to accept the negative traits of our personality, which I think are quite. When I compare them to the other personality types, I think they're quite. We've used words, not very nice words to describe who we are. Anger and words and I think we have to come to terms with that, and I've come to terms with it anyway, and it's working for me.
So is it that you, having been so fixed on perfection and wanting perfection as you see it on the outside, is it that once you start to loosen up there, you start to find the beginning of everything is actually quite perfect without your tweaking and adjustments?
Definitely.
That's a big realisation, isn't it, when that starts to...
And it's just lovely, because it means that energy, you can, with confidence and integrity and trust, put it somewhere else, rather than doing that policeman job that you're talking about earlier, or checking up. I don't want to do that for a start. Really, you talked about who am I really? I don't want to do that.
No.
It's like an ordeal. I've been told, something's told me I have to do that from a very early age, and so when I see I don't have to do it, it's lovely. It's really, really a great opportunity just to let things be, actually.
Kind of like you're taking a great weight off your shoulders, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've been very ethereal and light.
And you can live there right now. So you talked about the worrying of the past or imagining the future. You don't beat yourself up about what happened or the word I said that was wrong. It's like, so I said the word, and look what happened. So it happened. But it's funny, because of another part of me, even as I say that to you now, is beating me up saying, well, that's just laziness, that's slovenliness. So there's that continual battle with the superego kind of thing to leave it alone. But it feels that is actually really nice, actually being able to play. You used the word playfulness earlier. There is a real playfulness, and if you're able to pull these bits together, and I think my experience can pull lots of different things together and play with it and tease and pull different parts and see what happens. I think that's something we can bring for people. I've really noticed that I can be in a meeting with 20 or 30 different people, and I think we have this ability to synthesize things, to pull things together, which on the detriment is you then analyse things to death and think about all those things that a patient could be presenting, and as a result don't do anything. But the real free thing, and the bit where you stand up and you're feeling really good about it, and you're acting and helping, so that point about serving, is that you can put it together for other people. because they can see you doing it, and then they appreciate it, and you go, wow, I didn't do any work then actually. But people have really appreciated what you've done because you've pulled everything together and come out the other side with something, you know, a solution to a problem that wasn't there.
I think one can inspire. We're great, you know, we inspire people. We can also intimidate people. I've seen that, you know, afterwards, after the event. But inspiration, I think people can learn and feed a lot off of us when we're good.
Mm.
So you mean like in your role with a meeting?
Yes.
It may be that you can sort of lead the team on, you can analyse the problem, you can get a very good view of it, and then actually lead them on with your idea.
Mm. Mm. And what's interesting is you say that, and I'm thinking back to something you said, Ian, about who you really are. I had the sense that when that's happening, there's a flow, there's a real quality to it. You know, speaking for this experience I've had, the embodied experience, it was just a flow, and the anxiety wasn't there at all in it, because something else was acting as opposed to having just to think up here. I wasn't thinking it, I was feeling it, I was being it. Yeah. And there was a sense of tiredness afterwards in these cases, but the quality of the tiredness is so different to the quality of that real tense, it's a really delightful exhaustedness.
It's coming from a different place, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How funny.
There's something I wrote down. I hope I can read my writing now. It was from the book Facets of Unity by A.H. Almaas, who written quite an in-depth book about the Enneagram. And this bit was about type 1s. The potential is to see the world as it really is, without our perspective and judgments, our likes and dislikes. We have to let go of our mind. It doesn't matter whether we think things are good or bad. The moment you see that everything is perfect, you see your effort to make things better is pointless. Everything is co-emergent with being. That is holy perfection.
Gosh.
So I thought it was very beautiful. I don't know how that resonates with you guys, because this was written for a type 1, and the last thing here that, you know, is a jump. I know it's a big jump in a way for a 1 that is basically saying everything is perfect the way it is, and resistance to that is pointless, and everything is co-emergent with being.
And at the best moments of my life, I can feel that, and I can sense those. But there's a lot of the time where it's that, no, I don't believe him. He's not quite right on that. I know better. You know, part of me saying, I know better. It's not. It can't possibly be meant to be like this. So there's, you know, I know for me, I've got a lot to work on still with that acceptance. But I know from the glimpses I've had, when that acceptance comes, that it is, it's a much more beautiful place to be. And it does just feel right, and you're walking along under the sunshine and the leaves are falling in the autumn sunlight, and you know, you're delighted, and you're not sure why, and you really don't care that you don't know why, or that you're delighted, or if you're miserable, you don't care that you're miserable, you just are. So yeah.
But when it's pissing with rain and you're late for the bus and you just fall in a puddle, how do you feel then? Is everything still...
But it comes again to where you're at. So some days that is brilliant. There could be nothing better, because that was, well, you know, isn't it funny being wet? But on the other days, oh God.
Don't you find that you can trigger itself off very quickly, instantaneously? Like
tiny things.
You know, you could be fine, then suddenly something would happen, and bang, it's like a trigger's gone off.
And it's that massive spiral downwards.
That's right, and you're in free fall at that moment. You can't come back until you've hit the bottom, and then you realise what's happened. And then many times I felt disappointed with myself after the event, you know. I said to myself, I thought I was more advanced, I thought I'd evolved more, but I haven't progressed at all. I'm back where I started.
Yes.
There you go, that's self-criticism.
You know, that's the sort of things going on in my mind.
That's a great thing to point out, isn't it? Because yes, we all get this feeling, doesn't matter which Enneagram type we are, that sometimes we're back where we started, but at least we know that there was somewhere else to go, because where we started was one time was what we thought was the whole universe that existed.
That realisation.
So you got a perspective, which is a huge jump, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a couple of minutes left, 2 or 3 minutes left. I don't know if anybody has any things they want to say the last few minutes, maybe to people who are watching who have suddenly had the shock of finding they're a type 1 and thinking, oh dear. Any words of encouragement or warnings? Or well, they may be watching and they're really pleased that they found they're a type 1.
The thing that's really helped me is the realisation that being kind to myself and being compassionate to myself about this self-criticism for a start, and just not getting in that spiral and that complete negative loop, is that, okay, if it's happening, but I now realise it's happening, that is a really good start. So, and being kind each time I notice something, however small. So if I notice that trigger, I may still go down that really bad path, but I've noticed the trigger, and that's better than I was a month ago or a year ago. So being really kind with myself. And I've noticed that I'm being kind and compassionate with myself. I kind of sense, I may not act it out perfectly yet, you know, as my wife would probably say, but I feel more compassionate to those people around me. So instead of just being angry or resentful or judgmental, there's compassion. It may be with judgment or anger, but there's some compassion. The edge has kind of gone. So little steps, just taking the time to notice that happening has been really helpful for me.
I suppose it's, I mean, you know, you're showing your self-knowledge is developing, isn't it? In that you've actually identified something which before would have just been automatic, and you're sort of just accepting that has happened, and you know you don't want to go along that track. You want to stop, whereas before you weren't even aware of it, and it's just sort of an automatic reaction.
With me, I remember being with my yoga teacher and ranting on about something that had happened, and he's looking across to me from the other side of the room, and he's got a smile on his face, and I'm thinking to myself, he's not taking me seriously. And I finished ranting on, and he says to me, Carlos, he says, you've got to learn how to forgive. And I said, okay. And I started, you know, but he says, not the other person. He says, yourself. You've got to start forgiving yourself for feeling this way. And it was such a slap in the face that I needed to receive that slap in the face. And it kind of like the veil was lifted. That's when I realised that, you know, the only way that we can be free of ourselves is by forgiving ourselves.
Well, that's been a great place to finish, I think. I really appreciate the three of you coming in today, Carlos, Anne and James, and I think you really have given a feel of what it is to be a type 1, and for that I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for watching Conscious TV. We've now almost completed our series on the Enneagram. We've got one more to go, the type 2, which we're doing in a couple of weeks. Then the whole set will be there, and you can, if you want, you can go through and decide what you feel you might be, and then learn the potential of that type. So thanks again for watching Conscious TV, and I hope we see you again soon. Goodbye.